Alien. I had, obviously a much older movie, Alien. I'd seen most of the movie Alien. Alien is the type of movie that's not really made for me either, because I don't really gravitate towards horror, but I do like monster movies. And I never really thought of it as a monster movie. I'd seen most of it before, but I decided, I'm doing this, sci-fi movies. And I thought, what are some sci-fi movies that I either hadn't seen before or just really haven't sat down and really fully paid attention to beginning to end and tried to read the movie and so forth. So I wanted to do that with Alien and Aliens. I did that as well. But Alien, what a great movie. I freaking loved it. I don't have anything critical to say about it, to be honest. It nails the whole horror in space. The tagline was great, in space, no one can hear you scream, which is great because it highlights the claustrophobic nature. I mean, this all-powerful monster. I mean, they're using flamethrowers, but in the first movie, Alien, you're not even really sure if the flamethrower is doing much to hurt it. It's kind of retreating from it a little bit, but can anything kill this thing is really the idea. So I liked it. There's a lot of great themes in the movie too, of the sort of progeny the alien is trying to survive with the pods and the facehugger and so forth, trying to send on its progeny. The humans are trying to survive. In the first Alien movie, there are no children or no thoughts of like motherhood or anything like that, but Jonesy, the cat, that's a really important little part of the story, because this cat, this domestic cat, you can think of like, who in their right minds lets a cat inside a spaceship, especially like this big industrial, like salvage, spaceship, knowing the places cats can get into, knowing the damage they can cause here and there. Who brings a cat, into a spaceship? And it adds in, like, how do you even go help a cat if it's scared? I mean, cats can disappear forever and you'll never see them, if they don't want you to. So it's a really just knowing that a cat is there, and like towards the end when Ripley has to go and save the cat, like that's huge. That's a big deal. It's people it's humanity trying to protect more vulnerable life forms, whereas the aliens just trying to prey upon more vulnerable life forms, So you got that juxtaposition. I love the fact that the movie begins and ends with the sleeping pod, which is itself is sort of a little womb-like place, coming out sort of as a rebirth or something like that, or retreating back into the safety of humanity, basically. Man, it was really great. I could talk a lot about it. The cast was wonderful. You've also got the idea of with the android there. Again, what is humanity? Is it humane to the android is the only one that talks about empathy, when he's being destroyed, and he's like, even though I'm not one of you, I'm not without sympathy. I do feel bad for your plight, but the good of the company, it does have this sort of class consciousness to the movie too, where the company just, they don't care if they sacrifice the whole crew of salvagers. Bring this thing back so we can study it and, market it or whatever. And then, of course, even within the crew, you've got the two, utility guys or whatever, maintenance men, kind of, barking about how they don't get as much money, because they're not one of the ones that runs the ship and so forth, So you've got some really cool commentary throughout the movie, little explorations. I mean, it's just a tight film, really well made, beginning to end. One thing I'll say about the movie, I loved the ending too, because of the visual and the just fitting in with the themes. I love it at the end that Ripley has this last battle basically in her underwear, and apparently that was a big deal. That was a big deal, and I've still heard about it today. I've been in college and hearing university professors, the male gaze. This is one of the examples that always gets thrown up about the male gaze. She's just doing that so men can look at her and blah blah blah. It makes perfect sense. As Sigourney Weaver herself has defended it. She's been fighting this sweaty, nonstop battle, blood and guts everywhere and everything. She's finally in a ship where she thinks, okay, I'm safe now. I can go ahead and put myself in this stasis pod, and go on to safety. So she's going to strip down out of all of her disgusting clothes. I don't know if it's true. I don't know how much of these sources were true, but I even heard that Sigourney Weaver thought Ripley should just be in the nude. That's probably a bit much. But I like the way that she's stripped down to her bare, no armor, right? That's the idea. She's very vulnerable in this moment. And then she, of course, has to fight the thing again, which makes it all the more terrifying. It's all the more terrifying. If she'd been all, buckled up and everything again, it wouldn't have been quite as terrifying. Plus she's all in white, it's the innocence. It's the, it was just great. It was a wonderful scene. It reminds me though, you'll never, when people are just programmed, like feminist theorists are programmed to think this way about movies and books. Anytime a woman is scantily clad, oh, it's the male gaze, that's terrible, blah blah blah, and they're just programmed. They pull up this sort of pre-programmed speech within themselves. You can almost deliver it for them. I remember when I was my first semester at Spalding University, going there to get my MFA program. Each year for the little boot camp thing, the residency they call it there, they highlighted a different concentration. So, I went there for the fiction concentration, but each year was highlighted a different one. So everybody had to get a little taste of each of the concentrations. And the one they had this year was screenwriting. So they had all of us read this book, this novel called Winter's Bone. I think it was called Winter's Bone. And we read the novel, and then we watched the movie as well. And we had the director of the movie come talk to us. And it was one of Jennifer Lawrence's really early movies. It was a good book. It wasn't a book I would ever pick out on my own to read. Just, not my, type of subject matter that would draw me in. But reading it, I was like, it's really good. It's really well done. Now, the book was by a man, and the movie was directed by a woman. There's a scene in the book. Okay, so it's about, I think it was set in rural Kentucky or Tennessee, one of these like really rural mountainous places with the characters in the book were really, sort of a low income, area. And this, there's a whole plot and everything, but this girl who's trying to like kind of hold together her family and keep together, her family, take care of them and so forth. She has to go and like go out to some of the neighboring farms and talk to some neighbors about some stuff. She doesn't have a car. She's walking. She has a long skirt on, and it kind of bundled up, layers upon layers because it's dead winter, it's freezing out there in the mountains in the winter. And she gets at one point where she's trying to make it all the way home, but she realizes she won't be able to make it all the way home. So she has to camp. And, rough country folk, they know how to kind of survive a little bit better than we did, or we do now or whatever. So she goes and finds this cave, and she's able to grab some fuel together for a fire. And her clothes are just wet through because she's been trudging through the snow. And she can't find anything that's dry enough to kindle the fire, to get it going, to dry out some of the wood she has and so forth. And the last thing she can do, she's taking her clothes off because they're soaking wet. And the only thing she can find that's dry are her underwear. She has to take her underwear off and use those to actually, because they're dry, and she can start the fire with that. I thought that was a beautiful scene. That's a beautiful picture of like, she has to, because she's trying to save her family, she has to give of herself, give of the most intimate core way of herself. She's serving as the mother for these children, even though she's an older sister. And that's a beautiful picture. Yeah, take my very underwear, and just use this to create some warmth, some life-giving fire. And that was it. The book doesn't like, describe her lithely dancing in shadows around the fire or anything. No, it's not some sort of sexualized scene. It's a beautiful picture. It's really symbolic. As soon as I get there at Spalding, oh my gosh, we're doing their all book discussion. They spent like at least 10 or 15 minutes just wringing their little hands over this one scene. And person after person was raising their hand so they could just virtue their little, signal their little virtue about. I remember there's one screenwriting professor was like, I think this is just really problematic, and it's just really it's problem with the male gaze and something we have to look. And he finished whatever garbage he was saying, and then he looks around just kind of like, did everybody get that I signaled out there? And person after person was just, and this is the way that this liberal programming, this is not education. This is, here's this file, tuck it away, and whenever this triggering aspect comes up, don't bother thinking, just pull up this file and read it for yourself. That's all it is. And then when the director came and talked to us, of course the people are going to like try to ask some questions, then weevil around to that scene again, and the woman's like, yeah, I figured that. We didn't put that in the movie because I think that was probably just the fact that a male wrote the book. I'm like, well, see, that idiocy, that sort of limiting perspective just robbed you guys of a beautiful scene. There was nothing male gaze-ish about that scene. There's nothing sexualized about that scene at all. It's a beautiful symbol of what this girl's having to give for her family. But you can't talk to people. You can't talk to people these are ideologues. These are people who have sacrificed their intellect to the ideology. So when it comes time to think about something, they turn and consult the ideology. They don't actually think about it. They don't actually interpret it or consider it for themselves. We have to consult the ideology first. So it's it's garbage. Anyway, that was a whole shtick that brought up about the scene in Alien. But Alien was awesome. We can talk about Aliens later too. Darth Enigma, thank you for the super chat there. He said, now I'm curious about your opinion on the Alien versus Predator movies. I haven't gotten that far. I've seen parts of Aliens as well, but I went ahead and watched that beginning to end. I'm not going to talk about that tonight because I want to get the thing in before my time's up. But it was great. Aliens was so wonderful. It was so wonderful that I was excited to watch the next one, Alien 3, which I know you guys know. Oh my gosh, why'd you watch Alien 3? And it's horrible. Alien 3 is a garbage movie. That's a crap movie that hurts culture and should be just gone from existence. I hated it. Hated it. And I don't really have any desire to see the rest of them because, you know me, once you bust up a continuity, I'm not interested in hearing your really good story that takes place later in the same continuity as this crap that, I didn't like. I do understand, though, the Alien versus Predator. I think Fan Man was saying something that it's kind of like its own universe or something. So I might watch that one day. It's not off the table. But Studio Super, thank you for the $4.99. Said, when I'm looking, it's not the male gaze. I am straight, so it's the male straights. Thank you very much. About gaze strikes. I see what you're doing there phonetically. Very clever. Yeah, the idea of the male gaze or all this. See, like I said before, there are critical theories, they call themselves, which aren't critical. They're not about learning from the literature or learning from the film. All these critical theories are about is how can we use this book or how can we use this movie to further our political agenda. Feminist theory, queer theory, or gender deconstruction theory, I guess. They kind of merged them now and called them some different things. Marxist theory, post-colonial theory. None of these are actual ways to learn from books or learn about movies or whatever. They're ways to use books and movies to further their own built-in foundational political agendas, which is garbage. And that's the crap that's taught in school. Again, that's why I didn't go all the way to a PhD. I was going to go to a PhD in English, but my master's degree in English, my master's program, this was just nonsense, just bull crap, shoveled, over and over and over again. I was like, well, screw this. I got my MA in English, but I was like, well, I'll do an MFA in creative writing, learn how to write creatively, my own, and do that kind of stuff, because that's a terminal degree in the fine arts. But I ran into so much of it, that garbage at Spalding University there as well. So yeah, it's just when it comes to the liberal arts or even the fine arts, I don't think college is all that useful. Said it before, I'll say it again, but that's a whole nother. Nathaniel Losball said, did you watch the theatrical or the director's cut of Alien? I think it was the theatrical, because I know that in the director's cut, for example, there's a deleted scene that's actually added to it in which you see the captain being sort of fed on or to develop another facehugger. And that wasn't in the movie when they did Aliens. And in Aliens, you realize that the facehugger or the eggs are laid by a queen, not out of a fed upon human or something like that. So I would like to go and watch the director's cut, but it was really good. I mean, I applaud Alien. It was amazing. And Aliens, though I'll talk about that more in detail later, was really good. I watched Alien 3 also because Lance Henriksen was in it. And I love Lance Henriksen's work. I'd loved it before, but after watching Millennium recently, it just made me realize how much I really dig him as an actor. Even he had really critical things. He was talking about how the movie's it's just so nihilistic. It's like there's nobody to root for. It's just you walk out of it just feeling gross, and he was in the movie himself, so yeah.